I was not wearing my safety glasses and I had battery acid shoot me in the eye. It took me about a week to go back to work. When I got to work, the person I was supposed to fire was the person that got me to the eye wash station, and I had to let him go. And that sucked.
Today's guests didn't just step into the automotive industry. They've been a driving force in reshaping it for decades. They have proven time and time again that leadership, innovation, and commitment to excellence are non-negotiable. As seasoned service leaders, they've not only built cohesive, high-performing teams, but they also created programs that reduce technician churn and improve profitability. Their expertise in coaching, strategy, operational efficiency has made a lasting impact in the stores that they lead, raising KPIs and setting new standards in the automotive field. Whether it's fostering collaboration, driving technician development, or managing dealership operations with precision, this is the story of leaders who have turned challenges into opportunities of every turn. Join us today with two amazing individuals and their incredible journey, Alec and Clemente, on the Wrench Turners podcast. Gentlemen, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Folks, we've got a challenge. So we've got two awesome human beings that have been automotive for a very long time. And I know y'all don't have long attention spans, so I'm going to do my very best to make sure that we get their stories told in a fashion that you guys want to consume. Okay, so we're going to kind of speed run through this a little bit. So bear with us and make sure to give them as much attention as you can, because these two are genuinely awesome human beings, leading teams, changing the industry, and genuinely want to make the industry better. The reason why we're having this conversation in the first place is because I brought up work order writing in our SDL group chat, and Alec decided to be the victim, the next guest on the show, to talk about writing stories, especially for warranty, so on and so forth. And we're going to get to that later, and that might end up being another episode given the length of time, but folks, enjoy these two people's stories. So let's jump into this like we always do, and jump into what got you both into automotive in the first place. Alec?
I'll be honest with you. My father wouldn't let me touch a tool growing up. And I did the Navy and came out of the Navy, went to college, and graduated during a recession. Choices of employment was a 250 population town for a grain mill. Going to Western Auto back in the day, it's kind of like modern day Pep Boys. And my wife was not in on going to a town of 250 people. Automotive it was. And I learned the tire business to start. And I've always been, I have a gift of gab, and I can sell most people most things that they need, but I've got a really strong ethics code and I just won't cross it. So I've left teams that were sell at any cost and kind of forged my own path. I choose who I want to work for based on how they treat their customers and how they treat their employees. And today, I've gone from service advisor to service manager, service director, and I truly feel, other than running the operation of the business on the financial side of it, I'm there to be a coach for my teammates and help them become better selves, better people in general, and help them strive and reach abilities and skill sets that they didn't realize they had.
I appreciate that. That's having that moral center and ethical boundary in doing what we do every day is a necessary thing. It's very easy to blur that line or cross that line when you're talking flat rate or when you're talking about full commission sales on the service drive. The sell at any cost, the only people, you're hurting everybody. You're hurting absolutely. You're hurting yourself. You're hurting your customers. You're hurting your team, because at some point that becomes a cliff and you effectively throw yourself off of it. I've never seen it work long term anywhere for anyone. I've seen
Once
people
you go over,
ushered
you
out.
can't come back up.
Yeah, no, there's no coming back from it. So I appreciate that moral center. Clemente, what got you into the trade?
So when I was younger, I'd always take everything apart. So I was kind of curious in the industry. I do have other family members that are shop owners. So that's kind of where I started from. Independent side, fresh out of high school, trying to figure out what we were going to do. And I was already kind of doing it part-time with him just for like a side gig and some, high school job.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of liked it, the way they ran it was kind of, you greet the customer, you do the service advisor part of it, you do the repair side, you do the parts side. We kind of did everything. And I liked it, I like the customer facing part of it, the repair side of it, the technical, the electrical, just kind of like a jack of all trades in that business, So that's kind of what got me into it, and stepping out of the independent world and going into the dealership world. That's kind of a whole other ballpark right there. So learning.
It's incredibly different in that regard, right? Like working in independence, it's interesting because there's a lot of folks out there, a lot of mechanics out there that have never experienced what it's actually like working in a dealership. They can
Yeah.
speculate. I see it regularly on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube where they speculate on what it's like at a dealership because they're friends and families or they have acquaintances or whatever when they go to independent repair school because there's all kinds of the like Napa puts on things or whatever. So they talk and whatnot. But their perception of what it's like in a dealership is skewed because 80% of the 80-20 rule everything. 80% of leaders aren't that great, which means 80% of shops aren't really that great, which means they're talking to 80% of the population mechanics that aren't experiencing a great teamwork or great leader. So they're getting the shit end of the stick being told to them, which is what they think is the commonplace. Now, 80%, that's quite common. But at the same time, it's not what we strive to be. It's not what the top 20% do. It's not what the top 5% do. And when you get that narrative told to so many people, especially those who only have ever worked in independence, it really skews what it's really like in a dealership. When you get a really solid, high-value leader leading a team in a dealership, can really, really change everything for everybody. And I think it's more so than it can in an independent shop. And you probably can agree with me on this one, agree or not. But if you're in a 4, 5, 6-man team in an independent shop where everybody's doing everything, it's still super hard to get anything done because everybody's doing everything, right? When you get into teams of 20 technicians, 3, 4, 5 advisors, you've got 2, 3, 4, 5 parts people, you've got 1, 2, maybe 3 leaders managing crises, helping people get in and out, you've got porters, everybody's doing a job, right? They can focus on that job. Advisors can focus just on customers. Technicians can focus just on the car. That narrow focus is something that's really hard to do at an independent when you are dealing with the customers, when you are dealing with the car, when you are trying to call in, in certain, like if you're calling into all data, trying to get information on stuff that isn't necessarily posted, and then you're trying to diagnose the car, and then you're trying to order parts from parts people who don't answer the phones at another business, not even your own parts counter, right?
Yep.
That challenge isn't the same at the dealership. It's almost non-existent in that capacity at the dealership. There are other trials and tribulations and differentiators at the dealership that I'd love to talk about, but it's really different. And so with that in mind, at the small team that you were at the independent going to the dealership, what was that transition like? What was that first year going into the dealership like?
So it was kind of awkward for me just because I was kind of the guy to go to at the previous business.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of being just in the back, kind of stuck in the back was kind of getting to me, you could say,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to be the guy that they want to talk to, I want to be the guy that's going to fix their car for them, but at the dealership world, it's kind of hard because you have technicians that are just there to fix cars and you have their advisors that are there to sell the work. And so that's kind of like the hardest transition for me personally, because I was kind of the guy to go to or the person that would pick up the phone when you would call that certain business.
And now that you're in the role that you're in, are you getting a little bit more tangible customer experience, tangible team experience? That way you can be that person. And what is the thing that you've had to learn in order to do that at the dealership?
The biggest learning for me at the dealership world was basically the team, because I went from a 4-person team
Mm-hmm.
to about a 20 to 25 person.
That's
So
a crazy big difference.
managing the people, managing the different departments, or working with other departments to get the job done and get it done, processed, the turn rate, trying to get the turn rate higher, trying to figure out different processes to get this, machine pumping,
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what's making me learn more, adjust here and there, and just absorb more from Alec here, because
Awesome.
he's my teacher right now.
What's one? So I'm leaving Alec out of this for a second here because we're one-on-one here a little bit. What is the one thing that in the last, say, 12 months, what's the most important thing that you've learned on your own? And what's the most important thing that Alex taught you in the last 12 months? What are those two things?
Hardest thing, I would say, learning the number side of it.
Mm.
Trying to keep that in somewhat of a good shape. Learning what's good and what's not good. Luckily, Alec has taught me what's good, what's not good. You got to keep it here, do this, do that. and then all that just starts clicking, because he's really good at explaining everything, that's what I'm really thankful about. He explains everything. He's like, hey, if you do this, this is going to happen. If you do this, this might happen. So you got to watch out when you're doing this. So it keeps me on like limbo, and I'm like, okay, so I got to do this, tweak this here, so that way this works, and then just, stay on my A game, basically. That's what I have
Nice.
to do.
Nice. Alec, I think what we're kind of talking about is using, like, I've been bringing this back to something I heard online. I don't remember who originally said it. I don't know, even if it was Alex Ramosi, I don't know. But I heard the phrase more better. And I realize it's two words. Is two words really a phrase? It is and it isn't all at the same time. The cool thing is it applies to just about everything. Everything in business it's more or better. Are you making enough money? Well, we all want more. Okay, well, if you're not making enough money, how do you make more money? Well, you get better at the thing that you're supposed to be doing. And when you get better at the thing you're supposed to be doing, more money, in theory, will come. If more money's not coming, you need to do the thing better. So as I keep saying over and over every week, every time I publish, every time we talk in any kind of capacity, the boring stuff is the stuff that makes us money.
Yep.
Practicing the thing over and over and over and over again, getting better at it, is the thing that makes us the most money. Whether it's a service advisor's ability to sell, whether it's a technician's ability to fix, whether it's a parts person's ability to look up things quickly. Let's harp on parts a little bit here as much as we can, right? But all of those things, it's those boring things that make us money. So you're learning the little things that you got to adjust a little bit more, get a little bit better, a little bit more, get a bit better. And as you said, you got to tweak this here and then tweak this here and then tweak this here. And if you tweak it too much, it's going to go off balance and fall off the floor, onto the floor, right? So you got to be careful of that. To that point, Alec, self-proclaimed coach and obviously coaching, what are some of the challenges that you faced in that first, say, couple years? You came out of the Navy, you got into automotive, you started in automotive, and now you're in a position where you're leading. Where did that transition happen? Why did that transition happen? Do you enjoy leading? Let us go through this.
I would say naturally I've always worked in, so when I was in Western Auto, I was the hatchet guy. I was in parts, and Western Auto would kind of send me into a store that was underperforming, and I would look at their numbers of what they were selling, reset up the business model of parts in stock, fire the 50% that were underperforming, hire a new crew, and I was out within 90 days. And I left the management team in place, and I was off to another store to work on another parts store layout. I think that my second store, I was not wearing my safety glasses, and I had battery acid shoot me in the eye, and I did not have full eyesight. During the 4th of July, I was wearing sunshades, and it took me about a week to go back to work. When I got to work, the person I was supposed to fire was the person that got me to the eye wash station, and he was there waiting for and my boss was like, and you can finish this first. And I had to let him go. And that sucked. And,
you want to talk about lessons in leadership right there? That's like the epic definition of they're great human beings. They just might not be great employees, right?
There's that. You could say that all you want and everything, but it just bites. And I've come to the decision, and I tell people during an interview process, if you ever come to a point where you're not a fit for this, understand this. I'm processing paperwork. You've done this. You've not been coachable. You haven't been willing to adapt and change to the business model that we're trying to provide as far as guest experience, performance metrics, or whatever. And I will give you plenty of opportunity to redeem yourself. But in the end, I'm being paid to run a business. It's not my business. I'm a steward of somebody else's money. And it's my job to make sure I'm a good steward of that money.
All right, wrench turners. You know I'm all about keeping things running smooth, whether it's an engine or my beard. That's why I use the Bearded Brotherhood. Their beard oils, balms, and mustache waxes are made with all natural ingredients. No junk, just top-tier quality. That keeps my beard looking sharp and feeling great. And their scents are next level, whether it's their best-selling Woodsman or my personal favorite, Barbershop. The Bearded Brotherhood keeps me smelling fresh, and my beard stays soft all day. If you take your beard game seriously, you've got to check them out. And because you're part of the Wrench Turners podcast crew, I got you covered. Use code WRENCH15 at checkout for 15% off every time you order. Hit up thebeardedbrotherhood.co, grab your gear, and join the Brotherhood. Trust me, your beard will thank you. Now back to today's episode.
That's a great phrase that I think technicians, when you're listening to this and thinking about, we've been talking a lot about developing technicians into leaders, and the things that you need to divest yourself from is the emotional attachment that you make with the team. You can't necessarily completely divest yourself because obviously we're human and those relationships matter. But at the same time, if you got to make a call like that, like Alec, the person who took him to the hospital after an acid in his eyes incident, was the first person he had to let go. That is something that is usually incredibly emotional on both sides, but you can't attach yourself so much that is too hard for you to do. If that's not something that you're willing to do in a position to be a steward, and this is a great phrase. This is a great phrase. A steward of someone else's money. If you're not willing to put that first as a leader, you're not going to be, or you're not ready, or you're perhaps not able to lead. Because even at middle management, even at service manager or shop foreman, you have to be conscious that you're now operating in a capacity of management where you are a steward of somebody else's money. However it is that you are responsible for it in some capacity, whether it's production, whether it's people, whether it's processes, software, it doesn't matter. You are still now a steward of somebody else's money. You are no longer doing the things. As Simon Sinek says, we are no longer doing the thing. We are now in charge of the people doing the thing, right? Yep. So, and that's what Alec is explaining. So to that point, you have to be capable of being the hatchet man. But on the other flip side of things, now that you're trying to focus a lot on coaching the team and making them better,
so what I found
what is the hardest thing about that?
So what I found when I was an advisor and I became better at when I was in the dealership world and I was on teams with the sales team and everything, I would find the young person. I would gravitate to the younger person on the team and I would teach them what I was taught so that they could have an accelerated learning curve to become a better advisor and make the money I was making. I never look at anybody else as a threat to me and my production. My production is my responsibility, but someone taught me and I ought to teach somebody else. And so I've been a service manager for a few different places. And the last time I was a service advisor for the Fowlers, I had a young, God, he wasn't even 21. He couldn't even drink beer legally. And
in your country, at least.
In my country. And he lives in a 3-generational home. And I was like, my only phrase was, I was probably there a week. I was like, hey, I've been with Honda for over 20 years. If you have a question or there's something I can do to help you out, let me know. More than happy to help you. Mm-hmm. And he thought I was the most cocky person he ever met in his life. And what he found was later, I was just wanting to help. I didn't care who taught him what, or if he wanted me to help him, great. If you don't, not a big deal. But if you want me to, I'm going to teach you what you need to do in order to have a great day, and multiple great days make a great month. Mm-hmm. So he now is $100,000 annual advisor. Mm-hmm. He's 23, 24.
That's crazy.
The best compliment I ever could have was I had a customer come in and they go, "Are you father and son?" Diego's behind me going, "Dad." And I'm like, "Son." She goes, "You guys aren't related." No, we're not. But he comes over to my house and watches basketball with me. He's a great kid.
So to that point, I think somebody said this to me a couple of years back. One of the greatest things as a mentor or leader or coach, one of the greatest compliments that you can get is not verbal, but seeing someone else, seeing your coachee, your mentor, your mentee or whatever, seeing their paycheck go from X amount of dollars to double to triple to whatever it is. You're investing your time, your energy and effort in them, and it's paying them back, right? That is you're offloading the experience and giving them a paycheck in return, as well as a career, a pathway to success. Those are the kinds of things that we're looking for. Clemente, from your perspective, not necessarily Alec, but in your career, what are the things that you've been taught that have had the most effect on you in the shop?
Most effect? How do you say this? You want to be as honest and basically try to repair this vehicle like you would repair yours. That's probably like the biggest advice that I've taken on. myself. Yes, a car can have 10 different leaks, right? But if it was your car, which one would you repair first? What order are you going to take it in? Are the front brakes needed more than the rear brakes at the time? Like, that's probably the best advice that I've gotten, and it's worked well out for me. Because one, you get work out of it. Second, you get a repeat customer. Because after either they get paid again or whatever, um, they'll come back and do the rest of the repairs. So
Gotcha.
I feel like that's probably like the biggest advice that I've gotten, and I've taken myself and ran with it, you would say.
So tactically, you're looking at different methodologies to try and foster loyal customers,
Yes.
treating them like you would treat your own car. Now, I couldn't do that. I absolutely couldn't do that. My car was always the last to get fixed if it got fixed. If it was leaking anything, I would top it up and let it leak. I finally had to get rid of my Suburban because there was a hole in the roof, and I just simply got tired of getting dripped on. So off it went.
Off it went.
I've had like 32 cars in my life. I would literally run them. And when people say that they run them into the ground, I actually did for the most part. I got rid of my last BMW. I had a 1999. My last BMW, quote unquote, said 1999 E46 with 300,000 miles on it, blew the head gasket on it. It's like, I'm not fixing that. It's not a $5,000 car. It's $1,000 car. I don't have the time, energy, or effort to put into that. Off it goes to some kid who wants to make a drift car because it was rust free. It was 25 years old and rust free. Blown motor, great drift car. Awesome. So I couldn't take your advice, but I understand exactly where you're going with that, trying to foster loyal customers long-term. I had the same conversation with one of the previous guests, Josh Arnold, who was talking about how he went through doing the MPIs on his own long before they were really a thing. And he's been doing them for free for years. Now he is getting paid for them, but at the same time, he said on camera in recording, I would still do them even if I wasn't getting paid because my customers want them. My customers come talk to me because I have a process and I take care of them like you are doing. So I appreciate that. So to that point, what's something that you are doing in the store, Alec, outside of that, and let's say a 30,000 foot view that a brand new service manager should learn right off the rip to help foster long-term loyalty?
I think 30,000 foot level and everything is you have to be willing to walk the shop a couple times a day, even if it's in a different building. And you don't necessarily have to talk to every single person in the shop, but you have to make yourself available to every person in the shop if they want to talk to you about whatever. And they have to have that opportunity to, hey, this isn't going right. This is going well, whether it's good or bad. But you have to make yourself available to your team. Otherwise, they're never going to find you. They won't. They'll find you with their notice. And because they don't feel like they're wanted and that they're expected to be there on a timely basis, that they're expected to have a certain production value. It's that walking around and being available that creates the loyalty, in addition to the decisions that you make, and that you're making decisions in the best interest of both your technical crew as well as your sales crew and the net profitability of the business. Because net's not a bad word. Because if the store is not netting, then there's no jobs, and they'll figure something else out. And I think that's probably from the 30,000 beyond collecting the money and walking the lot and finding the cars that are standing too long. You've got to make sure your team is in place and that your team feels valued.
Okay. Interesting. And you would say that was probably that's definitely something that they need to learn. I learned that quickly, that the shop walks were valuable. One of the things that I didn't learn quickly is how to know when to talk versus when not to talk. And that is, I think, is pure experience. I know I started to learn it while I was still in stores, but it's something that you need to do a lot and get feedback on, both from the people that you're walking with as well as your own leadership, to understand better what's successful and what's not. Because not everybody wants to talk. They might still talk, whether they actually want to or not, but you have to start reading body language. You have to start reading facial expression. You have to look at posturing from a distance to understand whether that's a person, whether that's the kind of posture that you actually need to go talk to because something is wrong and you need to know now, or something is wrong and you need to stay the hell away, right? There is a subtle difference between the two. Clemente, is that something that you think that you're capable of doing now, or is that something you're still very much learning?
I mean, I'm older. I mean, I've learned my lessons by being a bull in the china shop, and I've learned mine for being the pacifist. I think what makes the dynamic for Clemente and I in the shop is that I work through Clemente. Clemente runs my shop. I run the business, and I'm supposed to be available to everybody equally as far as if you got a problem or you need some help getting something resolved and everything. But I'm not a technical guy. I couldn't tell you how to put a set of brake pads on. I'm not going to pretend I do. But I know if you're standing on a ladder that's not balanced and everything, that's an OSHA violation. And I will say that directly to you. But I'm always going to go through my shop foreman, because if I don't go through my shop foreman, then I'm undercutting him, and it's not fair, because now you undercut his ability to do his job that we're paying him to do. And so often you get this rift as far as, are they a productive manager? Are they a non-productive manager? I think that's not true. I think he is productive. He may not be flagging hours, but he's productive because he's making the shop efficient, and he's helping grow our younger techs into real techs by teaching them how to do the different things. And so we're developing at an accelerated rate a young shop crew.
Nice.
That's my job, is
Nice.
to make other people better, quicker, and see where the raw talent's at and develop that raw talent for the good of the business. I think one of the things that Clemente, he wanted to do some things at the shop before I got there, and we had to realign a lot of things at the shop. And we're probably only 15% non-productive in the shop. Everybody flags, including my express teams. And they eat better at home because they're flagging more hours than they ever clock. And they get paid more per hour because they're on flag. Mm-hmm. And I think this will work for me, as far as this will work, and telling Clemente this is going to work. Clemente wanting to do it, but not sure how it's going to shake out. And then seeing how it took off, and then be able to this month reduce the amount of hourly support that the flagging techs have. And so we're now down to 2.5 hourly techs, because one of the hourly techs was supposed to go flag, but he just wasn't comfortable with it yet. So we're giving him some more time as an hourly, but he's flagging. And so he's going to learn pretty quick that he should have gone flag and made the money. But, you got to learn those lessons.
You know what? The aspect of that is there's a lot of distrust.
Mm-hmm.
Rightfully so. Like I said, 80-20 rule, right? There's a lot of distrust, a lot of mistrust, a lot of miscommunication, a lot of lack of communication, poor leadership, poor brand awareness, all kinds of things that go into good, bad, or otherwise the state of the industry as it is right now. Your team, if they don't trust you, they're never going to produce. Conversely, if you don't trust them, they're never going to produce. From your side, Clemente, what would you say is perhaps one thing that you have done, with or without Alec? What's one of the things that you do to help foster trust on the shop floor so that they have gotten to where they are?
So my biggest thing is shop equality, you could call it. All my guys flag about the same amount of hours, because my job is to make sure they're making their paychecks, right? But I need to make sure that our workload is getting pushed through the shop. So I need to grab onto these guys and push them along with me. I need to figure out where each technician's breaking point is, and then find it, and then back it up, and then nurture him until he gets to the next step. Okay, you hit consistent 80. Okay, next pay period, we're going to hit consistent 100. Okay, we'll do that for a month. We'll push, and basically get these guys to start producing more, because my biggest thing is you always want to have stuff cooking in the crock pot. That's what I always tell everybody. Take this car that's a warranty diag, right? Take it in, diagnose it, send your recommendations. That's sitting in your crock pot. And then bring your curb shot in, or your alternator that's in, bring that in, bust it out. By the time you're done with that, you're going to have something else coming out of the crock pot, you can say, to bring in. Always try to find a way to stay busy, but take as much as you can, and try to manage all of that.
Having the support system like that too, when you're in a team environment and you have the ability to have leadership support, when you have team support, you can start stacking like that, because that's the money. right?
Yeah.
You're talking about doing the boring work, your boring work is your gravy work. It doesn't matter how complicated the boring work is. Doing an alternator is not something that you just go, just going to flatten, pop off an alternator. That might be 2, 3, 4, 5 hours worth of work, depending on the car, right? Unless it's like a super simple Toyota and it can be done in about 15 minutes. I digress. Point is, that's not necessarily easy work, but it's simple, it's boring. But on the hoist is a thing that you're probably going to bash your face against for a couple hours trying to figure out what it is. You're probably going to send that recommendation. The recommendation is going to come back. You're going to have to call tech line. You're going to go da-da-da, trying to get things done, right? That's the hard thing. That keeps your mind at work. Everything else doesn't keep your mind at work. It keeps your body at work, right? And you got to balance the two. Sometimes you get them both in one job, right? Sometimes you get the warranty diag up on you got to check engine light up on the hoist. You get the tires off. You send the recommendation for the warranty diag, get the tires off, sell some brakes, sell some tires, sell some tie rods. The repair comes back. Okay, you get authorization to do the repair, and now you've made 8 hours, right? And you got to figure out how to maximize your time through that. And when you have a support system, when you have a leader on the shop floor who's going, okay, I know tech A has this, tech B has this, tech C has this. All three of them are going to be tied up for the next 5 hours. How do I get the 3 waiters that just came in the service drive through the shop? Yeah. When you have a team capable of producing the work and everybody's riffing off of everybody else, and you've got a team leader who's going, okay, A through D is done. They're done. I can't touch them. I need to leave them alone. I need to back off. I need to let them do their thing. Tech E needs a little bit more responsibility and needs to be pushed. I'm going to give him all 3 and see if he sinks. I'm not going to let him sink. I'm going to see if he does sink. If he does start to sink, I'm going to pull one of the other techs off. I'm going to take my senior tech and I'm going to get him to help out on those 3, jam it through, and now everybody learns something. I can see how far I can push them. I can see how far I can push the team lead. I can see this, that, and the other, but that requires a team atmosphere, right? It requires it.
It's not necessarily pulling someone off, right? Because I'm the kind of guy that is not scared to get my hands dirty. So if I'm the one that's got to go in there and help them, I feel like that's a really big building block. Because one, they don't feel like you're just pushing them off and throwing someone on there with them. It's actually you and him bonding, trying to figure out where in the process of him working on these cars, caved in, and what we're going to do next time to avoid this, And I feel like that's one of the biggest things that I like to do with my guys is try to figure out what was the problem that made you get backed up, so that way it doesn't happen again, And I feel
you need to learn a process? Do you need to learn? Do you need a new tool? Do we need a new tool or a new process, or do you need to go to training?
And everybody's different. I have guys that are like, I don't need a tool. It's just my process. I have guys that are like, they're constantly checking on their SOPs. They're constantly on top of their stuff. And I have some guys that are just stacking this stuff up. So it's kind of hard to manage it all and learn everyone's habits, but it is doable, and it works at the end of the day.
It really does. That's learning how to manage people. That, like I said, it's people in your charge, right? That's key in there. You're no longer doing the things. You're now taking care of the people doing the things. They're in your charge. So to that point, we've been talking about this a little bit, and let's go down the rabbit hole a bit further. And the most important question is, what's each of your piece of advice for a technician to help them be happier, healthier, more productive tomorrow? Alec?
I think the biggest place of you have to leave developing the ability to leave home at home and work at work. You can't take work home. You can't take home to work. If you need to do a PTO day, then do a PTO day, because it's easier for the shop if you're not there, if you need to deal with something at home. And it's not fair on your family to take the troubles from the shop back home.
Awesome. Clemente?
My biggest thing is be a sponge. I was always taught to be a sponge. If someone's willing to teach you something, absorb it, and that has actually brought me a long way. Because you want to be able to learn as much as you can, and use it, use it, apply it, teach it, so that's probably my biggest advice.
I appreciate that. Both very awesome. The leaving work at work and the home at home, that's one of the biggest challenges, and it nicely ties in to what I'll ask next. Being able to do that successfully is a challenge sometimes, right? we're talking in both circumstances, being a sponge is like being humble enough to accept someone's experience, to accept somebody's teaching,
Yep.
right? You have to be humble enough to say, I'm going to sit down, shut up, and listen, right? And it doesn't matter whether it's up or down in terms of, we'll call it shop rank. If you're the shop foreman teaching someone, or you're a technician listening, or you're a technician listening to a leader, or a leader listening to a technician, learning can happen in any direction, for any reason, for anything. Our ability to sit down, shut up, and listen, our ability to be humble in that nature, can really help us all. And again, back to leaving work at work and home at home, you're right. I've experienced it myself. It's a lot easier to take a day off than contaminate the shop, because we all know it's like a void. When someone walks in and bad is probably going to happen today, as soon as they walk in the door, they should just turn around and go home. Unfortunately, those are the same people quite regularly, not always, but quite regularly. They're the people that can't be told to leave, right? They are a very difficult individual to talk to on a regular basis, typically. Unfortunately, that is a failure typically on onboarding and or hiring process, right? If they've been hired, they're already a problem, typically. And those are the people that typically don't like to listen at all, unfortunately. So, and that leads to other things, right? Talking about anxiety, which leads us nicely. So folks that have been watching along, I've been asking questions of guests as along to ask the next guest, ask them a question. So we're a couple of deep now on here, and my last guest was Louise as a party, and she's an awesome Aussie, and she works on heavy equipment and commercial stuff in Australia, and she is a advocate for women and minority in automotive, in the trades in general. She has an awesome podcast, The Anxious Tradie, and I might get that wrong. I think I've actually just said that. Anyway, I'll put the link for her show in the bottom of this one to make sure I get it right. I apologize, Louise. But Louise's question for both of you to answer, because of her focus in mental health, just like my own, what do you do to calm anxiety?
You first.
I hike and I ski, and I have two doodles that, I hang out with them. My wife and I used to be about 260, 270 pounds at my biggest. And once I got down to 225, I could get a dog again. And we drove from Denver, Colorado to Kentucky just before the pandemic hit, and 3-day turnaround, and got my first doodle. And then when I got down to 210, I got my second doodle.
Nice.
She said that's enough and no more. But I love my puppers.
The two or the weight?
Tell you what, I'm down to 205, and if I can get under 200, I'll be ecstatic.
You're going to get a third doodle?
No. Two's good.
Two's good. Clemente, what's your answer to the question? What do you do to calm anxiety?
I work, man. I'm a workaholic. If it's not work, it's probably working on my own cars, because I don't have a whole lot of time to do it on. But when I am stressed and want to be by myself, that's what I do.
What about the twins?
Well, I have twin boys, but they're a handful.
That is not removing anxiety.
Oh, the one definitely does. He comes over to my house and helps his dad when I got a problem, when I need help with a project.
Yeah.
That kid's awesome.
We were just at the hospital with him. He cut himself, and yeah, it's not fun.
I
Couple
tell you,
days at the hospital.
Children are wonderful. It is wonderful to become a father. It is wonderful for all the experiences in life to become a father, to be a father. But you are absolutely correct. I would say it's at no point other than the when the random hug comes, like, I love you. Yes, there we go. There's anxiety gone. Stress gone. All of other thought gone. But you're right. So I agree. So I think on that bombshell, that's a great way to end the show, folks. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time this evening. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. It was a good time.
So, folks, I think that's a great place to end. I hope you enjoyed the episode this week. I hope you hit that like button. I hope you subscribe and keep checking us out every couple of weeks as we air new episodes. I think we're going to do our warranty conversation might come out a little bit later on. We're going to have one here in a bit, and we're going to talk a little bit about warranty writing. We're going to talk about work order stories. We're going to talk about the 3, 4, 5, or 6 C's, depending on how deep this conversation goes. Take a look out for that. Let's end with a quote, as we always do. And this one's a little bit deep. All of us, at certain moments of our lives, need to take advice to receive help from other people. Talked about that today, didn't we, folks? That's Alexis Carrel. Folks, Remember, negative pushes, positive pulls, and always clean your toys before you put them away.